welcome back again. I have read your comments under the video and I actually got some inspiration for today's topic because of that. Where in particular there was a man saying that, Susan, please stop focusing so much on feelings. People need to deal with that themselves. Instead, we should be focusing on intuition and positive thinking and finding a way forward. Well, there is kind of a point to why I am talking about feelings. We are going nowhere unless we connect this and this. I am actually very interested in science, in logic, in philosophical disciplines. I am a huge fan of how logic is built, how you conduct science. You could have found me there one day in the library with like 10 books about the philosophy of how to conduct science. So that's how nerdy I am in regards to this. And I have a lot to say. So what I want to start with in regards to science is that a lot of this is conducted, I'm sorry to say, because men has primarily been into science. The way men use their brain, the way they use logic, is not more real or important than how women use their brains. Men, or the male brain, has been primarily invested in science. So they need to see things very concretely. Bear with me. They need for a pen to be a pen. And in order for no one to trick their senses, they really need for someone to define all the details that makes this into a pen and not into an elephant or something else. You have to be really super to the point so that I can agree this is a pen and you can agree this is a pen. Everyone needs to agree that this is a pen. And this creates some interesting problems. Like, science is not the art of finding absolute truth. I'm sure most of you know this. It's about finding causality. I do this and it will lead to this. And if a lot of people can copy the same procedure and get the same result, then we can all agree on reality. That is pretty much how it works. Well, the male brain have a specific focus on concrete things that you can observe and measure. And they kind of need to do this in order to, I was going to say understand anything. That is why women are so complicated to men. But this is just how the male brain works. And I guess some part of the brain need to work like this. The female brain don't work like this. The female brain works a lot more with the abstracts, with generalizations, as it's called, because it's not really generalizations, but there are no words for what women are talking about, because yes, you can say that men were mostly invested in language as well. I don't know, I have no claims for that, but when I think about every time I think about structure, I think about the more like left logical brain. We have grammatics, we have words, and we usually have words for concrete things. We also have words for abstract things like feelings, but usually it becomes like feelings, energies, and we're not specific about it because it's not something that we really take great care or great interest in. Like spiritual, could be anything, right? It's like we don't take our precious time to define that which we can't see and touch. And sometimes when I hear men trying to explain what women like, they can say stuff like flowers, pink stuff, makeup, shoes. Yeah, women sound very shallow when you describe us like that. But for a while I wonder, why are men saying that? Why are they keep bringing up makeup, shoes, and yeah, just this kind of stuff? Because that is what they can observe. They can observe shoes, a lot of shoes in the room. They can observe makeup, a lot of makeup. They can observe perhaps pink. There is a lot of pink here. I wouldn't decorate things in pink. So they are simply pointing out what they can observe, but they don't see all the feelings. So they don't see the hours that women spend thinking about them, trying to make relationships better, trying to bring some kind of meaningfulness to the whole, thinking about all these small details. They don't see that. And they usually don't see less concrete things, like if a guy forgets to give water to the plants, it's because he might not even register that as something concrete and important. So there is like a whole half of the field that is not picked up naturally by men. And so when we come to all the important stuff that needs to be done in this world, we need military and war, and we need rules, and we need school, we have to chase these points, and this has to be a competition about grades, and there has to be a hierarchy, and you have to fight in the world, and you have to you have to show them that you're better than anyone else. That's half of the truth. When you look out in nature and you ask the question, how does this all work? How was this made? How was this built? How is my body operating? How come that my mind is more complex than the complexity I have access to when I use my conscious brain? Because my conscious brain is very stupid in comparison to how complex I am. How is that? I mean, if you ignore half of it, the abstractions, the feelings and all of that, and if you go about surviving with this cold hard logic, you know what's going to happen? You're going to die. You're not going to live. It's not possible to take a human being, put them in a wardrobe, and just examine that you have oxygen, you have food. Surely this human species should be alive. No, surprise, it's not. It's not going to work. So what are we missing out here? We're missing out everything. And the further science go, they are also figuring out stuff. Quantum physics was a great leap in the sense of revelation of what I've always trying to say, is that it's not linear, thanks God. And when you studying like, I think it's called like quark particles, I don't know the language for it, but the building blocks beneath the physical material stuff, then you're gonna find that everything is in a state of potentiality. Yeah, you know that these waves, they are just potentials. But the scientists discovered that as soon as a human consciousness is observing these little particles, they stop being potential and they get like fixed reality. And they couldn't wrap their heads around this, because this means that there is not an absolute reality out there for us to study and observe objectively. It seems like reality only happens when you observe it and interpret it. Scientists know this, but if they know this, then why are they still chasing and trying to observe reality in an objective sense? This is a question I have not yet understood. This can't be done because reality as it is exists within you or in a certain relationship to you. I will explain this in further videos. I will not even try to explain all of this now. But you can't observe or find objective reality. You can't. Because objectivity has no real meaning for anything in the world. The only person, the only living being that can say something is objective is a subject. The only one who could have any importance about this word objective at all is a subject. So me, as a subjective person, can say, I think what I'm now observing is objective reality. But we can never find objective reality because we can only make such a claim from a subjective point of view. So the object can't say something about the subject. The subject says something about the object, and that is because all the things that exist on your so-called outside is coming from within and from your consciousness, and you're gonna find this more and more as science is progressing, believe me. The same thing goes with when scientists discovered that there was this ghost phenomena, I think they called it. I think Einstein called it that, where if you change the state of one of these particles, it's like similar particle is automatically changing as well, even if it is very far away. And now this wouldn't make sense, because in the linear kind of thinking, this information should be traveling to that other particle. Like, if I think something here, you shouldn't be able to think the same thing at the same time as me. It should be impossible. It should be impossible. It's kind of like it at least needs some kind of distance of traveling. Even when we speak, it needs some kind of time for sound to be transferred. But this happened instantly, indicating that there is no transfer time at all taking place. It just happens instantly. And then our scientists would say that this could not make sense, this could not be possible. Where I come from, I say, of course it must be like this or we wouldn't exist, because universe or life or reality, whatever you wish to call it, is built up from relationships. I've said this many, many times. I will never change my mind in this. It's just true. It's relationships. And more specifically, it's a kind of, we're moving from states to states of relationships. So because it is a relationship state, then you may say that as soon as you perceive things from your mind, actually all pieces changes in relationship to another. You cannot see that something iffy is going on in your reality because everything changes at the same time as you change your kind of point of view. If you would wake up in a very bad mood, you would start, I don't know, bumping into things, getting a bad call, I don't know, more negative stuff going on. It's a shitty day, it continues to be shitty, and you don't understand why. While the same can happen if you have a good attitude. Good things can come about, and you don't understand why. Kind of is related to this, but more about that in the next video. This is kind of how reality functions. This is not spiritual or magical or abstract or miracle. It's just science, real science. That's so beautiful. And there is this thing in perception that needs to happen. Because if women would have thrown themselves into science, which they never would, women would more argue that we already know what is important. So what else is it that we need to detect? While some men would say, but then you would never invent anything. Because how can you invent anything if you don't know how it works? And yes, they are right in some of these things that they are saying. Because as women, we will many times feel that, oh yes, I just wish a man could come and fix these practical things so I don't have to think about it. It's absolutely true. While at the same time, guys can be completely clueless about all the rest, about why certain things matter that they can't see. If you combine these two functions in the head, then you kind of get the optimal system. Actually, when you combine them and when you start integrate them within you, you're starting to get the best of both worlds. And you're starting to understand and comprehend more about reality. Because if we don't integrate them, men may say stupid things about feelings or say that women are too complex because they don't understand, and they can feel threatened by being emotionally vulnerable and talking about their feelings, because that was happened. They are becoming alienated to kind of the right brain because they don't understand it. And the stuff we don't understand feels very difficult for us. They can feel like a hardship. We can be scared of them. We can feel intimidated by it. And when we feel intimidated by it, we can downplay it. We can say bad stuff about it because we want to avoid it. And we want to feel good about ourselves. So we try to just heighten the importance of what we already know. And women can tend to do the same. So they can be too much in abstraction and feelings. They can let feelings overwhelm them instead of looking to facts. That is true. So we kind of need both. But the problem I have right now is that the outer reality is basically hijacked by the left brain. And there's no way to go around it. And the more you look at concrete things, I can sell concrete things to you. I can sell a pen to you, but I can't sell these feelings. And so they don't have any value. So every one of us should just be thinking of going out there, work to earn money. And it's just a very concrete mindset. I did the same comparison when I was in the military. The military completely male-dominated left brain, because when testosterone operates, you don't trust anyone. You think about you, the individual, not trusting. And this is like the military in a nutshell. It's like, okay, something suspicious is going on in that other country. We should spy on them and then attack. And that's not even a joke. That was basically what happened. But no woman would ever do that. They wouldn't say something weird is going on over there. I think I'm going to bring my gun and just possibly attack before they attack me. No woman would reason like that. They would say, oh, let's make new friends. If women were into politics, there wouldn't be militaries and war. We would have befriended each other and helped each other out. So why is this allowed even to continue makes no sense. And this also brings me actually to how I want to round up this video. I know I'm just touching the surface on a lot of stuff, and kind of the purpose is for you to just ask questions, and I'd be so happy to elaborate on that specific area you wish to hear more about. Because when someone say that this is important to understand, you should read science, and you should read about this, and this is how we make progress in life, and we can advance technology. Yeah, but the human species is dying. In case you haven't noticed, people aren't giving birth anymore. People are depressed. They're not forming relationships anymore. I think we're dying. I don't know. Because everyone is neglecting the right side of the brain. So when we think that the feelings aren't important, we are severely mistaking ourselves. So while science is trying to observe the outer objects, no one is feeling anymore. And what is progress? Because for me, it's not to build a higher tower. For me, progress is to actually evolve as this, whatever this is. That is to evolve for me, not to build a higher tower. I don't care. And I made another observation when I was in university. I was studying a semester of religion. And we had a female professor, and she was explaining, I don't even remember which religion we were discussing, but she had visited like a temple or a church where there was this clogged, what is it called, blood? You know, when the blood is just like dried up blood. And they said that at a certain hour or whatever, it's turned to fresh blood. So it starts to pour down a statue, and then it is compact again, then it's dried up again. And this is considered a miracle, and scientifically it should be impossible for anything like this to occur. And that was precisely what happened, and this female professor, she witnessed it. So she saw this blood turn from dried up blood to floating blood. And as she described this event to us, and we were like hundreds of us listening, she got lost there for a second. She got lost in her own experience, and all the students were just like fixated on her, thinking this is amazing, this is really cool, what happened. But then as she remembered what she was doing, she stopped herself and basically said, sorry. And I was sitting there and thinking like, what the hell? Why am I even sitting here? I am not spending the few years I have here in some kind of pretend. We are in university, so we will not believe in anything religious. We are scientific. So we just observe what these basically crazy people with stupid, superstitious belief systems are doing. But we know better than ever participating in real life. No, I will never participate in life. I will be objective. So I think that question was in everyone's head, like, shouldn't we be investigating this? Shouldn't we at least ask the question if this is happening and it shouldn't be able to happen? Then what is going on? What is reality? What are we even doing here? But instead, she was excusing herself because she got way too intimate with the experience herself, and she should be objective and just tell us what she was observing that other people were doing. So this is the problem with all of science. For the same reason, when we study quantum physics and we are making the observation that actually reality only exists when my human consciousness is observing it, making an interpretation about it, that's the only time that reality is fixed. So if I wouldn't do it, if I wouldn't exist, then my physical world wouldn't exist. And now they're actually talking about this, because I'm starting to hear a lot of podcasts and similar saying this, that it may be so that if I'm not observing this right now and I look away, it's actually not there, which is amazing. But imagine that. We already know that the physical reality is not solid. It's just space between everything. But could you imagine that right now, when you're not in Australia, maybe Australia doesn't exist? So this is very fascinating. But because this then left brain kind of thinking, male brain kind of thinking, have turned and tried to form our minds into thinking that this is good, this is real, this is objective, when I just said that it's only a subject who can make any comment about objects, if this is the case. And I'm trying to picture in front of myself how I will see people on the news, people in politics start to change their mindset and start talking about what really matters and start talking about feelings and relationships. Because if everything is relationships in reality, then why aren't we focusing on relationships? And how can we start to tear down this very hijacked system we have on the outside that will for sure bring us all to an early death, I was going to say, but I've talked about anti-life and how all creativity, all beauty is very quickly disappearing. And I'm also going to make a future video about AI and how the digital world and how your body is starting to communicate with the digital and making you less and less good at feeling another human fleshy being in the room. And what it is doing to us. So when someone makes an argument such as logic, objective science, and don't believe in this mumbo-jumbo spiritual stuff, please remind them that there is nothing that is separated from reality. So whatever is under the roof that we're all experiencing is actually happening to all of us. And they are simply making a very biased view, ignoring what they can't understand yet. And in the old scriptures, in old mythical scriptures, religious texts, when they actually try to describe reality, but I think because our modern society don't want to hear about what previous civilizations did, they try to say that it's just religion and myth. And what do I mean by that? You see, back in the days, they didn't call themselves religious. That's a modern invention that was coined in the medieval times. So no one back in the days actually called themselves religious. They didn't say they were superstitious. They simply described their current reality. There, they divided a lot of the old teachings in a theoretical part and also a mystical part. So there were like the smart people, they explained the theory. But the really smart people, they were the so-called mystics. I guess they were mystics because their intelligence was beyond what you could comprehend almost. But if you study what the mystics did, they said, okay, we have the theory, but how do we become it? How do we learn? How do we transform? So the mystics, they focused on the becoming part. How do you transform yourself? You see, because a scientist will never study how he can transform himself in order to know. Because you can't just read a book and stay unchanged. Even when I studied pedagogics, when I studied that, the first thing I learned, when you build a course, the purpose of the course is to change the behavior of the student. It's not to make them memorize something in your course, to memorize information. It is actually to change their behavior. So after they finish the course, they will have a changed behavior. So when you're a scientist, you think that you don't have to transform, you don't have to change. And yes, we can make an argument that it's surely good that someone is studying something, I guess, and explaining it to us. Yeah, but some scientists, they remain scientists for the rest of their lives. For the rest of their lives. Their whole career, their whole lives. And nowhere on that journey are they really allowed to say how something transformed them. And even if they were to say that, that still wouldn't be considered science. Nowhere in the world is there a focus on how we human beings can transform ourselves. But what do you think is most important? To spend thousands of hours, hundreds of years, to build a manual, to read the manual, but stop at that and never apply it? Or do you, just like me, think that life is perhaps not about theory, but actually about building, about doing? And in the science community, they will keep studying the so-called reality. And as I explained, reality is kind of conforming to the observer. But they will not talk about how that can change them, how that can transform them. So don't sit around and wait for science to one day say, oh, we discovered it. We should transform ourselves. We should evolve. No, they will not say that. And I think you kind of know this as well. I don't want to bash the outer system too much It don't know any better. But there is a risk when we go to psychologists that they don't talk about any personal transformation and that you are feeling ill because you fail at finding this healthy, thriving communion that you need in order to be happy in the current state of affairs that we have on the outside. Instead, you are perhaps given pills so that you can adapt to the outer society that is perfectly fine according to the establishment. And if you criticize it, you are censored. You're not allowed to criticize it. If you grew up in a really bad household, bad parenting, you were probably not allowed to criticize. I assume you have to go with it. You have to accept it. It would traumatize you, but you have to go with it. You have to obey, because we are authority. And friends, they just wouldn't do that to each other, now would they? The right part of the brain don't have hierarchies. The left do. But it doesn't function like that, because your body wouldn't be alive if its internal system was built out of bad parenting. It needs balance and harmony. And even a so-called bad person who gets sick needs to take care of their body. They can't shout at their body because the body won't listen. It's pointless to speak a language that reality isn't listening to. Reality is what reality is and will remain so. So why not start speaking a language that reality understands? Speak a gentle language that speaks to your body, that speaks to nature, perhaps even speaks to yourself and your fellow human being. So we are done following what these so-called experts, I guess they're not even saying it, they're just playing the game as it was set up, but it isn't right. It's purposeless. And I guess this is why I'm doing this. I guess I've been trying to study what humanity has been doing so far, just absorbing all my observations, feeling the ache inside because it's not right, and trying to understand how we can make this right. And with that, I'm going to try to do the best I can. So that was all for today. I hope this gave you a lot to think about. And please, any question, there are no bad questions. I mean, look at how society is now. Of course, we're all confused. So please, any kind of questions that you come up with, put them in the comments. And I see you soon again. Bye for now.